Make.com is a software that basically helps you create automations of your everyday apps so that they can talk to each other and automate tasks. Now, the best part about Make.com is the fact that it is no code, or low code, what they call it. So you don't have to have any coding background at all. So in this video, we're gonna go over the interface of Make.com. So we're gonna sign in, I'm gonna walk through kind of tutorial based of what it looks like and how to create what is called scenarios. And then secondly, we're gonna go over the costs. So how much are they charging you? It's a software as a service, so there is a service charge, but there is a free version. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, I wanna go over some other software applications that are very similar or competitors and see which one is the best one for you. If you're new here, my name is Liz. I'm a data science manager at Intel, but on the side, I like to film videos about software applications for work or side hustles or content creation. So I dive a little bit deep into that. So if you want to stay up to date on software and all that stuff, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, let's jump into it. When you first sign in, it's gonna look something like this. So the cool thing about Make.com is they didn't ask for a credit card. So you know there's a free plan of some sort. Now, what I have logged in here is it says my organization, which is just me because I don't have an organization. So I just signed up, I filled out the questionnaire, I just said it was for education and like I'm exploring, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But basically you have these like ribbons right here. So you can have teams, users, they can talk about different subscriptions that you can add or upgrade. But right now I'm on the free version. So this is what it looks like if you are on the free version. Now I do have one active scenario, which we can go over, but on the left-hand side is really how you're gonna navigate. When I first started, I went directly to templates. So I guess if you're unfamiliar with automation tools, if we look at scenarios, a scenario is basically like a flow, or in Zapier, it's a zap. It's the same thing. It basically, you have a trigger and then it will create an event. So right here, I have a create Microsoft 365 calendar events for Google Calendar events. So basically, when I add an event in Google Calendar, it will send that invite to my Outlook calendar. So I don't have to put it on both, because I do switch back and forth quite a bit because my work uses Outlook. So if we open this guy up, they're calling this a scenario. So in other places, they're called something else, but just bear with me here. So if we go in here, there's a lot of like logistical stuff. This graph is like too much for me. Like, someone remove this graph. I do not need to see this. There's a bunch of history, which kind of overwhelms me, but if we go into edit, this is what it looks like. It's actually kind of cool. So like when you hover over it, you can add different options. So if I click this guy right here, it says it's connected to my Google Calendar. Now, if you press add, all it does is you just sign in. So you don't have to deal with API keys. You don't have to deal with authorization. Like, you literally just sign in to that platform and then it allows it to connect to it. So this basically already filled it out because I used a template. So you can add other things. Now, the one thing I have to be careful about is the calendar, because I have a couple different calendars. So I have a YouTube, I have a Relax, I did the PTYA stuff, so I have that calendar. So I made sure it was my primary calendar. But other than that, everything else was super easy. And then same thing over here. I just logged into my Microsoft account, and then this thing already filled it all out for me. Like, the end date goes to the end. This is what they call dynamic content. So you can add, like, do you want the start date, you want it the same start date as what's in the Google Calendar. So it fills it out mainly for you. That's why I say it's low code, because sometimes you do have to use these variable names, but for the most part, I didn't really do anything crazy with it. So once it's done like this, I ran it once to see. So then I added a Google Calendar event. I just did test event because I was like, whatever. And then I saw it automatically pop up in my Outlook. So it worked. So I ran the flow, ran the scenario by pressing this little play button, and then I just turned it on. And you can set it to how many, whatever interval you want. I'm gonna do every hour, so I don't need this thing running constantly, but you can do it like every 10 minutes, every 1 minute. I think you have to pay extra for, but 15 minutes up to whatever minutes you want, you can add or whatever. I didn't touch anything else. There's some save, there's some notes and stuff. You can have them explain it. There's some extra stuff. So I think it's actually pretty easy to use. You basically just sign in and then it allows you to do things. So if we get back out of here, we can discard changes because I don't think I edited anything. all your scenarios will be on here, and you can see how this says on. That means it's running. So if anytime I add a Google Calendar event to my Google Calendar, it will send it to my Outlook calendar, which is pretty sweet. So how I found that template is by going to templates, and I basically searched the app because I'm like, I don't know what to test. That was one thing I was thinking about automating anyway, so I was like, whatever. But what's cool is they have all these different templates where you can have your Google Sheets go to your MailChimp, or, you know, there's some other weird Gmail to Gmail. I'm not sure what that one was about. But you can even type in the app. So you could type in like Notion, for example, and see what kind of flows they have with Notion. So Notion to Google Calendar, and then this one looks kind of crazy over here. Notion to Discord, you know, Google Forms to Notion. And you just search an app. You can also search multiple apps. You can search like, I don't know if they have no, maybe they do have a YouTube. Oh, no templates. But if I just get rid of Notion and I just click YouTube, it doesn't look like they have any templates for YouTube, but I bet they have some for Twitter maybe. So you can basically go in here, yeah, Twitter to Notion, Twitter to Discord, Twitter to Facebook. I mean, all these little templates they've built or the community has built. So it's kind of cool. The connections, this is just telling me, hey, it's connected to my Outlook and my Gmail. So I can reauthorize it, I can verify it, I can do whatever I want with it. Webhooks is a little bit more intense. We're getting more into the developer land. We're not gonna deal with that today, and you probably will never use one unless you're working with like an API that doesn't have a connector. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Keys, again, that's gonna be, I think they're referring to API keys. That's basically any application that doesn't have a connector that can instantly sign in. Devices is kind of interesting. I'm like, I get maybe you can have your iPad on here. I'm not sure. Data sources is cool. I guess you can have databases and stuff. There's some more options. And then there's some app stuff, which I thought was interesting. If you go to my apps, I tried to play with QuickBooks. I clicked it. It did not like that. It did not like the clicking. It does say read only, so I don't really know what this is about. But again, I think that's a little advanced for what we're trying to do. Like, this is mainly for automating your everyday tasks, like pulling some information out of an email and putting it into Notion, that kind of stuff. Okay, so how much are they charging us here? So I always like to look at this because we do have a free plan, but again, there's limitations on what your free plan can do. So if I look at this here, it says I can only have 2 active scenarios. That's really the only thing I care about, right? Because I'm not really gonna use any of the craziness of this software. I mean, unless you're really gonna automate some intense stuff, but 2 active scenarios is not a lot. So the one that we showed, I have 1 over here, right? That's 1. So I only can get 1 more, which kind of sucks for a free plan, because I know on Zapier you can get up to 5. So I'm kind of like, okay, this kind of isn't doing too great. But then I read the $9 one that's monthly, so $9 a month. You can get unlimited number of scenarios. So you can have as many automations as you want. And I think that's substantially better than Zapier. So I need to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure they charge you crazy amounts. So this is kind of cool. This other stuff, like file size and stuff, like, geez, like what are we doing here? And then the teams, you know, if you have a large company, that's pretty cool. Although I just feel like a lot of companies will end up using Microsoft products, and Microsoft Automate, it comes with Microsoft 365, so it's kind of easy to tack that on rather than have a completely different automation source. But then again, you know, that's more for like standard companies, and I think that's why they do the enterprise version. But I would say, if you're starting out, start out with a free one, see what kind of things you can automate. You really don't need to automate more than like 10 things. I mean, unless you're doing a lot, but 10 to 15 things, but it might actually be cheaper to do it on here. The operations is kind of interesting because I don't know what they're considering an operation. I bet it's that every 15 seconds, or I mean, every 15 minutes or every hour. That's why I have mine as like 1 per hour. So that's, you're hitting 24 operations in a day. I bet that's what that operations means. So probably saving a good chunk versus Zapier here, but we'll do some comparison in a little bit. But again, I would recommend just doing the free plan to play around with it. And if you want more than 2 scenarios, then upgrade. $9, that's not that bad. Now, I like to go over some competitors or some alternatives to the software that I'm reviewing. So for Make.com, the main competitor they have is Zapier. So you heard me mention it before. Zapier is basically the exact same thing, but instead of scenarios, they're calling them zaps for Zapier. But it's essentially the exact same thing. They have the same connectors. It's a little bit different on the interface side, so I'll link below my review of Zapier. But I think as far as the free versions, Zapier's better because you can have up to 5 zaps, where this software, Make.com, you can only have 2. So I think the free plan is actually better, but I think they get you on the upgraded plans. So take a look at that. They're always changing their subscriptions and stuff, but it's very interesting. So if you know how to use Zapier, you'll easily be able to use Make.com. Now the second alternative is Power Automate. I love Power Automate. That's how I first learned how to do these things, and you'll hear me refer to them as flows because I learned Power Automate first, and then them calling them zaps and scenarios. I'm like, it's a flow in my mind. But I think Power Automate might actually beat this out in the form of corporate work automations, because Microsoft Power Automate uses all the Microsoft applications, so Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, all those things is all connected, where this is, Make.com and Zapier are more for, your startups or not super well established companies. So like at Intel, we use a ton of Microsoft Power Automate. I don't even think we would be allowed to connect to these other ones. So I feel like a lot of large corporations, because they have such high security things and all their stuff's in Outlook and Microsoft, you might actually be better off learning Power Automate. Okay, and the third alternative is N8N, which is weird, it's N8N. It is actually a little bit more developer heavy, so you have to deal with API keys and stuff. But I will say, very cool, very detailed flows, automations that you can make. It's more for developers, and it does require you to have a credit card to sign up, but it's very similar. And they call the connectors nodes instead, and it looks more like a developer side of things and has way more connectors or nodes, but you do have to use API keys and you have to do a little bit of development work, but you can connect to some really cool stuff. If you were interested in seeing comparison between these different software as a services, then I will link it below or up here. I also went into a deep dive into Zapier and Power Automate, so I will link all my stuff below so you can check it out and see which one works for you.